Virtual Breakaway Podcast with your hosts Nick and Junior and producer Vince, bringing you elite fantasy hockey information to help you win your fantasy leagues and win at life.
Episode 41.
You
Let's
beat me to
go.
You beat me to it.
Central Division Part 2. Are we ready?
How did you like the first one?
It was good. We got a little bit carried away with Chicago. Bertuzzi in particular.
In fairness, it was the first one that we've ever done.
Good
so
point.
it's the first time ever that we use this format in order to get team previews out, because we didn't have an off season when we first started this podcast, remember?
Yeah, we started the
We
beginning
started
of the
week
regular
one.
season. Yeah.
Regular
Yeah.
season, week 1. And
41 weeks ago or so.
Yeah. And we didn't have a producer at the time either.
No,
We did not.
Producer got carried away because his team is all Chicago players anyway. So it is what it is.
Well, do you own any Nashville players or Winnipeg players or
Ooh.
Utah players?
Nashville,
Utah.
I own, but more prospects than anything else.
More prospects?
Winnipeg,
Oh, you have Kemmel, no?
I have Kemmel and I have Askarov.
Mm.
So that'll be interesting. St. Louis, I'm not sure I own anybody from St. Louis. Who else we have after?
Winnipeg.
Utah, Winnipeg,
Winnipeg, no. Utah,
formerly known as
St.
Arizona.
Louis, that's it.
yeah, no. This one might.
Winnipeg?
This one might be a short one for me.
So, this he's not gonna have a lot to say about these players.
Okay, so wait. So before we get carried away here,
I'm Nick. This is Junior. This is Vince to my right or
And-
left, depending how you're viewing this.
and you're probably wondering why I'm not wearing partial breakaway apparel.
Yes, actually, I'm a little bit curious about that.
Well, this is my
Did you not get the memo, or
this is my hoodie from winning the LPHL Fantasy League Dynasty League last year, and
he won it once, but he's got to make sure he mentions
I
it every
have to make
podcast.
sure everybody knows that I'm defending champ. Was defending champ, which is what I'm getting at right now. We have a mini ceremony to transfer, to hand off to the new defending champ of the Loose Pucks Hockey League,
Previously 3 times champ.
Nick and the Moncton Express. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Champion 2023-2024. 4 wins in the first 5 years of the league.
Very nice, Junior.
Dynasty, built a dynasty, and last but not least, our
Very
little,
nice. Thank
our
you.
little trophy
Thank you.
here. Here you go. Congratulations. Now go fly a kite.
Thank you. I'd like to thank my mother, my father,
For
my
creating me.
sister, and my entire family. For this is probably the only accomplishment I have in my life, other than my 2 kids. So, thank you very much.
Hey, you're welcome. You earned it.
I'm just gonna leave it right here so everybody can see it.
Now I could go back to my regular scheduled apparel.
All right. Well,
Bring us in, Nick. What are we doing, Nick?
let's start.
Tell
okay?
the people what we're doing.
We're starting with Nashville.
Okay.
Nashville Predators, ladies and gentlemen, 41 wins, 30 losses. As we mentioned last episode, we are not counting the overtime losses because, quite frankly, they don't count. Last year's power play ranking, they were 16th in the league, so halfway exactly. Mediocre, but 21.6% conversion rate is not bad. It's. I know it's mediocre, but 21% is not bad. They're scoring 1 out of every 5. Who's in? Nashville. You've done yourself a.
Okay, where's the list? Where's the list?
The
You
busiest.
know when you roll out the scroll there that's super long?
the busiest team.
Absolutely
In
the
free
busiest
agency.
team in free agency. they've basically opened a cup contention window maybe for the next few years with some of these players that they got. So they got the biggest fish out in the market, which was Steven Stamkos. Although some would argue Gensel
I'd argue.
is the biggest fish. But Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault are in. Brady Shea is in. Scott Wedgwood is in. Leaving is Jason Zucker, Kiefer Sherwood, and Ryan McDonough. Now, we won't get into those guys yet, but we will start talking about our tiers a little bit here. Do you want
to re-explain the tiers, Nick?
Yeah. So the tiers, we have 4 tiers. Basically, 91 plus is tier 1. 80 to 90 points is tier 2. Tier 3 is 70 to 79 points. And tier 4 is barely fantasy relevant, which is everybody hovering 60 to 69 points.
Yeah.
Well, at least that's how we programmed it, right? Anything under 60 points, we pretty much said is kind of waiver wire fodder. So we didn't really name guys that we predict under 60 points. But that's where the discussions are going to come in, because some of these players, maybe we are saying they're going to be under 60 points. We'll see. Let's start off with our tier 1, though. 91 plus point projected player, Philip Forsberg for Nashville Predators. I'm going to speak last. I want you guys to speak first. So, Junior?
All right. Well, I see a bit of a regression. He was on pace for, I believe, 94 points. He had 94 points in 82 games, so definitely on pace for 94. The season prior, 42 and 50. I see him more along the lines of a point per game player, slightly above. I think 90 is a stretch. And despite, you add a Stamkos, you add a Marchessault, you would think, you know what, he's going to get even more points. But how much more points can you possibly get if you were already the main focus of everything Nashville did? So I don't see him being healthy for 82 games again, because that was the first time he played a full season, I believe.
Well, 21-22 was a full season. 69 games, I think,
so
was
every 2 years he plays a full season.
No, well, 2014 to 2017, 3 seasons, 82 games. It's right down on the screen, Junior.
Yeah, that's at the beginning of his career.
Yeah.
I'm saying, but in the last 5 years or so, maybe had 2 full seasons. Anyways, whatever. We're talking about pace per 82 games anyway. So I see a little bit of a regression. His shooting percentage was average at 13, so that's good. I do think he might lose a little bit of power play goals because you're adding a Stamkos, who had, I believe, double-digit goals as well. So Forsberg had 13 power play goals. Stamkos had 19 power play goals. O'Reilly had double-digit power play goals. Like, at some point, not everybody could have double-digit power play goals. Same was with Nyquist. But anyways, we'll get to those players later. I do think he'll regress, but I still think he'll be a point per game player.
No, I think he'll do a repeat of what he did last year. I feel he's in his. I feel from the ages of 27 to 31, those are your prime years in the NHL. He's at 29 right now, years old. So he just showed last year what type of player he is. The years previous, he also showed he could have been more than a point of player, except injuries brought him back a bit. And I think the new additions will just help, because at the end of the day, he got 94 points and he was the main attraction. We can even say the only attraction in Nashville. Like, there was nobody else who was getting points. There was Ryan O'Reilly,
Nyquist.
Okay, Nyquist, who's 35 years old, right?
No, I'm not saying he's gonna. I'm just saying he got points.
But I'm saying it's that.
He had 75 points last year.
Who was their second line? So now you're going from a Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist first line, and now your second line is Stamkos, Marchessault, and Novak. So you have to balance yourself out to see who you're going to play against, right? So I feel the power play, he might regress on the power play, meaning he might not get as many goals on the power play.
But they'll turn to assist, maybe.
Exactly, but 5-on-5, I feel he'll have an easier time, because you can't always put your best defensive players on that line and then leave the Stamkos Marchessault line with your second best defensive line.
It'll be interesting to see if they keep that line.
Yeah, well, that's it. We don't know lines. It's early to know lines. And listen, I see the power play just improving. I feel Roman Josi is the number one defenseman who I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful.
We're not there yet. We're not there yet. All right. So what I'm going to say here is that if you look at his point pace, 82 game point pace over the last 3 years, in 2021, 2022, he had a 100-point pace. In 2022-23, he had a 69-point pace and then a 94-point pace. His shooting percentage wasn't out of this world. It was pretty
Average.
much his average. The only thing I'll say is that adding Stamkos, your 16th ranked power play might convert more. So in that sense, it might make up for any fallback that he has from the 94-point pace, and that's why I still rank him as a 90-point player for this year.
But he still had 32 points on the power play. How many more points can he possibly get on the power play?
I'm not saying he's going to get more points on the power play. I'm saying that he's going to have the same.
Yeah,
Because
that
the
could be.
power play as a whole is going to get better having better players around, right?
Right.
Your number one power play last year had Nyquist on it, had O'Reilly on it. Now you're adding a Stamkos, you're adding a Marchessault, you still have a Forsberg on there, you still have a Yossi on there. That's a pretty potent power play. I don't think they're going to finish 16th in the league. They're going to finish maybe 10th or top 10.
Yeah,
And
well-
just there alone, that might balance out whatever regression he has.
Well,
right?
when I meant regression, it's just because I think the points will be spread out more. Whereas last year was pretty much just Forsberg had 94 points. Yossi, okay, he's a defenseman. He had 85, but Nyquist was at 75. O'Reilly was at 69. After that, it falls all under 50. Whereas this year, there'll be more people with 30-plus goals.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be more players 60 to 70 to 80, between 60 and 80 points.
But Nashville will also score more. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, how much more can they score?
Well, they scored 266. They were 10th in the league in scoring. When you add Marchessault and Stamkos, it's not like you lost any
Yes,
of your goal
but
scorers.
let's say Nyquist gets thrown off that line and they add Stamkos. Example, okay?
Nyquist
Now Nyquist no longer is going to produce at a 75-point pace, guys.
yeah, but he gave you 23 goals, Nyquist. He didn't give you 30
But
goals.
He was barely
75
fantasy
point
relevant
pace.
last year.
Right,
He was 75 points. How was he not fantasy relevant?
He was
No.
a 75-point pace?
No, he got 75 points.
75
Nyquist.
points in 81 games.
No,
That's not
that's
going to
true.
happen again.
Okay, but
No, that's not going to happen.
Junior, this is what you have to look
O'Reilly too, 69 points.
But
is
why
a
do you
lot.
think that? Why do you think it's going to come off of Forsberg and not come off of them?
It will come off slightly from them, mostly from them, but also from Forsberg.
But
I don't know.
if you look at this,
I don't
A little
think
bit. Yeah, we're
I
talking,
think- I
we're
think
talking
that-
10 points.
We're talking about the play is driven from Forsberg. He's the play driver. He's the power forward that goes into all the dirty areas. He's going to have his role. The other guys, I don't know if their role might diminish a bit because now you're getting somebody that could enter the zone really well, like Marchessault. You're getting somebody that could snipe as well as him because nobody else could really snipe on that team before, like Stamkos.
the thing is, Forsberg was 2 goals close from 50, but then the next person behind him is with 26 goals. It's O'Reilly. So I don't think the production will come off of Forsberg. I think it's just they'll get more goals for, and they'll probably have 2 30-goal scorers if possible with Marchessault and Stamkos.
Look, anything could happen. It's interesting though. Like, where do you have him projected as to finish the season?
Around 84 points.
Okay, so
We're talking about like give or take 10 points.
Give
It's
or take
not
10
a
points.
crazy regression. It's just compared to last year.
it's interesting. I like it. All right, moving on. Our next player is Roman Yossi in tier 2 between 80 to 90 points. Last year, Junior, you just mentioned the fact that he had 85 points. What is Roman Yossi exactly?
A number 1 defenseman. That's 2 in 2 episodes, guys.
Oh boy!
I don't know how long I can go with naming
All right,
one per
we're
episode.
doing this all. We're doing this all previews, especially Vancouver preview, because that's where the comments came in.
Robin Yossi, 23 goals, 62 assists, 85 points in 82 games. Nice to see him play a full season last year. Very fair shooting percentage at 8.6. He had 33 power play points, 5 game-winning goals. Where do we see Roman Yossi going this year? I think a bit more of the same. I don't know if he'll hit 85, but close to a point per game. I think he can manage that. He's much better surrounded. Like you guys said, the power play should help, and he's still essentially the lead guy back there. Regardless that Brady Shea joined the team, it's still Yossi, top power play, top pairing. So anything that major that happens goes through Yossi. I see more of the same, honestly.
Well, listen, to me, his age, he's getting up there in age. He's 34 years old as a defenseman. I think the benefit for acquiring Shea is that his ice time could diminish 5-on-5 or even shorthanded when it comes to Yossi because of his age. But I feel his production will still be there. He's still a number one pairing defenseman. And at the end of the day, like we said, if the power play is going from 10th to top 5, you know he's going to be in the middle of half of those points. So I believe he'll still be in the 80 to 90 points.
Out of the 23 goals, only 9 were on the power play. So a lot of that happened 5v5. Can he do that again? I think so. He's done it in the past.
The only thing I'll say is that he is 34 years old. And I kept waiting for him to diminish. I kept waiting for that age curve, the one that you start falling off cliffs, right? It's not happening yet. However, he played 82 games this year. He was averaging 24 and a half minutes of ice time, okay? Last year, he only played 67 games. So, really, his health is going to play a big factor in this. Do I still see him as an 85-point? He still has the skill to be an 85-point defenseman. I think he will regress a tiny bit. His shooting percentage was 8.6 as opposed to his career average of 6.7. You know,
I expect his goals to go down. You're right.
I expect the goals to go down a little bit. Losing 2% of 23, though, isn't that much. You're talking about 2-3 goals, really.
Yeah. Maybe on the power play, might lose a goal or two because, there's Stamkos, Marcia, so.
Right. So you're still talking about a superstar defenseman, a number one defenseman, and in lineup combinations for daily faceoff, they have Shea and Yossi playing on the same line. So that's going to be interesting. We'll see how it goes, but I like what Nashville did this year. We're talking about bringing in players to support their stars, and they just added stars as well.
Yeah, they give themselves 3 years to win the cup.
Yeah, I like that 3-year analysis. It might even be 2 good ones and then one.
Exactly.
But we'll see. And a big part of that is the next guy we're going to talk about, which is Steven Stamkos. So Steven Stamkos, we have him in tier 3 between 70 to 79 points. I don't know if we all agree on that, but I'll start with Junior.
Again, all right. Steven Stamkos, I agree with that. I don't think I feel like when players hit like the age of 34, like we keep thinking, especially elite players, we keep thinking, it's their demise. And I used to be that type of guy that never used to draft them because, the year I take them is going to be the year they're gonna dip.
The fear of age.
And it's like the Boston Bruins. We keep thinking they're just never they're gonna not make the playoffs, or they're gonna have a huge regression, and they just never regress. They're always a good team. So we have to put that behind us, and until they regress, then we know they regressed. I think Stamkos can be close to a point per game. I do see a little bit of a regression because personally, I don't know about you guys, I don't like no matter how good the player is, I don't like new players going to a new city with a new team for the first time in their careers, especially after having spent their whole careers with one team. So for me, that's an automatic little bit of a dip because it'll take some getting used to. I could be completely wrong. I mean, players have done it before. Duchesne wasn't quite a brand new team, but he really didn't do well in Nashville, at least not for the length of his contract. And Ryan Johansson was the first one that was his first time changing cities, changing teams, and it started off not bad, but then faded out. So naturally, I see a bit of a dip, but I could still see him scoring close to 35 goals to 40 goals.
Yeah, listen, 70 to 79 to me
Yeah, I think that's very fair.
is fair. He's going to. I feel he's in the same situation as last year. He's not the main man. Last year in Tampa, he wasn't the main man. It was Kucherov and Point. Over here, he's not the main man. You have Forsberg, you have O'Reilly as a centerman. So he's not. He doesn't have all the pressure of bringing in 50 goals like he did in his career when he was early Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay has Hedman. They have Yossi. So I feel the adaptation will be better for him. I actually feel he might be playing with maybe better players than he played with in Tampa. Because if he doesn't, he didn't always play with Kucherov and
Okay.
Point.
On the power play, though.
No, on the power, but I mean,
it's not
5-on-5, he wasn't always Kucherov and Point. Sometimes they put him with Hagel and Cirelli. So already there, here, if he plays with Marchessault, it's. I just feel. Listen, he's 34. He's not in the tier 2, tier 1 anymore. That's for sure. But in the tier 3, I think it's reasonable. And like every player we're going to talk about, health is the biggest thing, right?
He stayed relatively
yeah, 100%.
healthy the
He
last 3
stayed
years.
relatively healthy for the amount of years he played in the NHL.
Yeah.
So I think 70 to 79, and I'd go 30 to 35 goals.
Before you go, just to your point, he spent on average half the season with Cirelli and half the season with Point and Kucherov. So it was on and off.
Yeah.
Well, the one major thing that I saw from last year was the start of the drop. And why am I saying the start of the drop? It didn't really appear in the points, right? Because he ended up with 40 goals, 41 assists. You're gonna comments in the Discord or comments in the YouTube chats are gonna be, what's this guy saying? But the fact of the matter is that he was a minus 21 last year. It was the first time that he was a minus double digits in his career. He went from plus 23 to minus 5 to minus 21, and we don't like plus minus as a stat necessarily, but if you actually watch Tampa, Stamkos was no longer the driver of plays. He wasn't fast the way he used to be fast. He needed somebody to set him up for him to snipe it in. He still has the hands to score, but he's no longer that driver of offense on his line. And I think that's kind of a little bit where Marchessault comes in, like you said. That may be a big help for him to try to get him the puck in scoring situations a little bit more. So I do start to see some of the underlying numbers say that there's a little bit of a drop-off for Stamkos. But he might be rejuvenated in a brand new team, right? Coming in and wanting to prove that he still got it in him. And I do still see somebody that's going to get 75 points. And that's where I have him projected 75, 76 points for this year in Nashville. So still a very good player. $8 million. I think it's fair. He's a little bit older. By the end of that contract, it might start hurting because he got 4 years at $8 million.
So in a dynasty,
He'll be 38 then.
In a dynasty league, because redraft leagues, obviously, it's a no-brainer. You can draft him. In a dynasty league, you're saying, well, not that you're saying, but based off what you said, you would consider trading him before he plays a game with Nashville, seeing as you think that his value is probably at his highest.
Look,
what would you guys do in a dynasty league if you could permit yourself of trading him? Would you, or would you keep him?
$8 million is not the end of the world for a 75-point player.
No, it's very fair.
So I don't think this year is necessarily the year that you have to trade him. But you're starting to get to near the end of that road. So I would not keep him all 4 years of his current contract. That's for sure.
If you're a contender, you're not
You
trading
can't,
Stamkos.
you're right.
Stamkos is going to be a 30 goal scorer. You don't trade a 30 goal scorer if you're a contender.
No, absolutely.
You're
Yeah.
not getting it back. So
But if you're middle of the pack or you're at the end, I think you have to consider it
If
before.
your team has gotten
Well,
older
well,
and you
then-
see you're you're in the 5th spot or the 6th
As a-
spot,
as a GM, you got to decide: is this year where I'm going to go, or if I'm still middle of the pack, then I wait and then trade deadline. I
or
trade
see
him.
what the return could be.
Yeah,
Maybe it's a young
exactly.
guy that sets you back a
Yeah.
year, but or whatnot, right?
Exactly.
All right, moving on. The tier 4 players, and we have a few of them here. Let's start with Gustav Nyquist because we had mentioned him before. He had 75 points last year. We're expecting him to regress closer to a 60 to 69 points, which is tier 4. Let's start with the other way around this time. We're going to go with Vince to my right.
Yeah, I feel a regression here has to do a lot with the age and players they signed. I see him if he hits 60. In the tier 4 section, it's more in the lower tier that he's gonna hit, so in the 60s to 65. And even then, I'm not too convinced that he's gonna actually hit that 60 mark. Remember last year he had no competition to take his place, right? There was nobody. There was him, Forsberg, O'Reilly. Now he's got two other players that can move up to that line, which is Marshall or Stamkos. So I feel his ice time will probably go a little lower because right now he was on power play 1. He's not on power play 1 anymore.
I think he's the one who gets booted off power play 1.
Yeah, of course. No, it has to be. So I feel already there is going to take out a few points from him. So I feel it's 60 is like the maximum I'd put him at in points. Like
So barely making tier 4.
yeah, barely making tier 4. I feel
If Nyquist gets booted off the first line, then Nyquist owners are in trouble because he'll lose his power play points. He had, sorry about this, he had 24 power play points. I think that easily becomes minus like 6, 7, 8, about 8 points because, look, injuries happen, and we'll talk, I don't know if we'll talk about him later, but he's not scheduled to be in our tiers, but a guy like Luke Evangelista should be taking the next step. He had 39 points last year. Naturally should progress a little bit, especially with all the talent around. Then the Stamkos play center. Does he not play center?
no.
I'm just saying we don't know what can happen. Like O'Reilly has to. We have to remember O'Reilly has to keep up as a center.
O'Reilly,
That's 34 years old. There's Novak there. What I'm saying is, Nyquist. There's a lot of guys that should be taking another step, or that came in to possibly compete with Nyquist. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if by halfway through the season he's on the third line or fourth line.
Yeah, I see it.
Well, so 3.1 million. That's his cap hit. 3.185. So you're talking about a guy that put up 75 points last year at $3 million.
It was a hell of a hit.
Right?
Great hit, of course.
Isn't that a great, for salary cap leagues, that's great value. For the real NHL, that's great value, right?
Yeah.
So for me, that's the part where I look at it and I would still take a risk on him if you're a cap league and you're looking for, because it's not going to cost, if you're looking for somebody to put up some points, it's not going to cost you much to get a Gustav Nyquist. And he's still going to probably play, I don't know about PP1 anymore, but he's still going to play top 6 minutes on this team that just loaded up. So I don't see him necessarily going down. I don't think Luke Evangelista is there yet to really get more points than Nyquist on the top 6, but he's getting there, right? Like Evangelista, I have him at 45 points for next year.
Yeah.
Gustav Nyquist, I still think he's around that 60 mark. So regression candidate, maybe for sure,
Yeah.
but maybe not to the point of not top 6 anymore.
But don't you feel Nyquist, even with Detroit, when he was the main guy, he was getting a lot of points. Then he went to Columbus. No one else was putting up offense except for him. He was given that responsibility. A lot of minutes, was putting up points. But like when he's not going to be that guy, is he going to be as relevant as point producing? I don't think so.
Look, he's getting up there in age as well. I don't think you want him to be the number one guy on your
He
team.
played 17 minutes last year.
Yeah, he's
It's not much.
That's not much, but
It's not much.
I don't see it being higher than.
I
No, I
Probably
don't
dropped
see
to
it being-
I see
16.
him going down to 14, 15 minutes.
Wow,
Well, that's third liner then.
Yeah, because
fair,
well,
right.
he's losing his power play one time.
that's for sure.
If you
Yeah.
look at every team, they want their first power play to play between 1 minute and 1 minute and 30 seconds
Per power play.
per
Notice a
power
lot of
play.
these players are 34 years old.
Yeah, but that's why Nashville went all
Josi,
in.
Nyquist,
That's why Nashville has a it's a 2 to 3 year window.
Stamkos. Okay,
So that's what it is.
Nyquist averaged 3 minutes on the power play last year.
Yeah,
let's move on to O'Reilly. So Let's go with Vince again because I kind of used and abused the junior here before.
Listen, O'Reilly, his whole career, he's been between that 60 to 70, 60 to 69. Once in a while, he'll go up and have that good season that's between 70 and 80. But I feel he'll be in that era. He'll be playing with better players. O'Reilly, what makes O'Reilly survive in the NHL is that he can produce the offense, but he can protect his two wingers by playing amazing defense. So a player like Forsberg feels more free and being more offensive, creative offensively because he knows he has an O'Reilly who's there, who's going to cover him if ever there's a mistake. So I feel he's going to be between the 60 to 69. He's been healthy in the last few years. So, I mean, I don't see his points going higher, even though the first line will be, let's say, a Stamkos, and because Nyquist did get 75 points last year. So I see him staying between the 60 to 69 points.
He has 3 more years at 4.5 million. That's
awesome value.
It's still great value for a player that puts up between 60 to 70 points year after year. Is he very fantasy relevant? I guess in a cap league you would say yes, but he's more of a two-way player that provides more real life NHL value than actual fantasy value. But
I mean, he was still pretty valuable in some leagues last year.
Sure, but you're talking about a point pace of 69 points last year. Well, 69 points on the dot he had last year, right? The year before that, he had a point pace of 46. The year before that, 61. So, again, you're talking about a bottom of your lineup player. If you're talking a 65-point average between those years.
Yeah, I think middle 6. But I see a bit of a regression because he got 26 goals last year. That's his second best total in his career. He's had 28 2 times. I don't see him scoring 26 this year, especially with the additions of Marchessault, who's a 30 to 40 goal scorer, and Steven Stamkos, who's a 30 to 40 goal scorer. And 28 of his points, that's 40% of his points were on the power play. So that he can still keep up, right? Because I don't see him losing power play one time.
Well, no, he's the center who's going to win the face.
I just see more his goals dipping and his assists staying more or less the same. But yeah, I think he can be a 60-point player, but he might regress a little bit.
You have to see if that's valuable for your league.
Right.
Like, I'm in one league, which is Fraps and Rigs. I had to drop him straight up.
Wow.
It's 60 to 65 points doesn't move any needles in that league.
How many teams in that league?
It's a 10-team league, and we start 9 forwards, 4 defensemen. 5 defensemen, 6 defensemen. I don't remember right now, but it's
okay. So about like a 14 player,
but only 3 centers.
10-team league, 3 centers.
Only 3 centers, and he only counts as a center. So do I want my last center to really be a 60-point center?
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense for me, right?
So it depends the league for sure.
Depends the league. Anyways, moving on to Tommy Novak, another center. Look at that segue. Jesus. I feel like we've been doing this really well lately. Tommy Novak, he is a 27-year-old left-handed center. This is his 3rd year in Nashville, actually in the league. He only had a 52-point pace. Why are we putting him in tier 4, Vince?
The only reason I see him in tier 4 is that, once again, the signing they did, he'll be playing with more quality players, better quality players. He wasn't getting power play one time anyways last year. So I feel 5-on-5, he'll just be playing with better quality players, whether it's with Marchessault, whether it's with Stamkos. His points will, if Nashville's going to score more goals, his points will go higher. But he is a type of player who's I think the leash is very short on him. At 27, I think, especially the stats he had 2 years ago, which were 43 points in 51 games, and then he comes back with 45 and 71. I think the leash is very short on him to perform this year, and especially that they surrounded him with better talented players. So That's the only reason I would put him in the tier 4 area.
Yeah, well, like you mentioned, 43 points in 51 games in his 2022-2023 season with Nashville. It's a 69-point pace. Like you said, he has better alignments. His most consistent and best alignment was Luke Evangelista, who we now have scheduled at 40, projected maybe 49, 43 points. He only had 39 last year. So Novak should definitely see a boost in production. I agree with you. I think it'll rejuvenate him a little bit in that sense, and he'll be a little bit more excited to play. Look, even if Novak has the second line center spot locked in. He has no pressure on someone taking it away from him. I don't think they're going to go with Colton Sissons over Tommy Novak or McCarron over Novak.
Right.
And I don't think anyone in the pipeline really is ready to come in and take his spot either. So I agree with Vince. There's got to be a boost in production here. I see him possibly hitting the 60-point mark.
Yeah, barely hitting 60. I think that's accurate. I mean, you guys pretty much said everything I was going to say, so I'm not going to spend too much time on Tommy Novak. The best part that I could say about Tommy Novak, really, is the fact that he has a $3.5 million cap hit. So 60 points at $3.5 million, it's value. There's value there. And I think that he will reach that 60-point mark just because by attrition he's playing with good players next to him. Lastly, Jonathan Marchessault, who might be on his line. What do we think about Jonathan Marchessault this time around, Vince?
The player has always played with a chip on his shoulder, and I think this year is no different. I think he was insulted that Vegas didn't offer him a contract after everything he did for that team, winning a Conn Smythe. So every time we say this is the year where Marshall will dip, he just comes back and just executes. So and he's surrounded with. I think Nashville did a wonderful job surrounding their players with talented players this year. So I think he's one of them. So I put him in the 60 to 69, but I'm not surprised if he goes to a tier 3 next. Like if he performs in the tier 3 section next year.
Go ahead.
He scored 42 goals last year. I think that comes down a little bit. What impressed me a little bit is he spent over 3 minutes on the first power play per game with Vegas and only managed like 17 points. So like it's not like his power play points were enormous. Only 8 of his 42 goals came on the power play. So he's very effective 5-on-5. Like you said, he probably drives play. I see his goals dipping, but maybe his assists going up. So like it'll balance out. I think he'll dip a little bit, but I still see him in the 60-point range. I don't think though closer to 60 than 70.
Okay, well, I mean,
and his shooting percentage was 15.8, which is 3% more than the previous years.
4% higher than his average, though.
Yeah.
So, but I just did a calculation of what's 4% of 42 goals, and that's 1 goal difference, 1.6 goals difference. So even if he drops a couple of goals, I don't think that's crazy. But I do think something else that you said, going to a new team, a new player going to a new team, and I think that does play a role, right? In Vegas, he was there for a long time. He was there for 6, 7, 8 years. So, you know, Marchessault being there for 8 years was a level of comfort with some of the players that he was playing with. I do see a dip here. And I know, Vince, you said that it's possible that he hits that 70. I think it's more likely that he hits the 60. And in his career, if you take a look at it, he had a 69-point pace last year, a 62-point pace the year before that, 71 before that, 66, 58, 59. Like, we're not talking about a player that has consistently been crazy fantasy relevant. So Marchessault, I think we have him in the right tier, between 60 to 69. Mm-hmm. And I think closer to 60 will be my presumption for this player this year. Other than that, I don't have anything else really to say about him. $5.5 million cap hit. Still pretty good value for 60 points. Just like exactly where he should be, kind of thing. We're going to talk about...
Do we want to mention Brady Shea quickly, or
Well,
he's
in our
power play.
he's in our power play defenseman section. I should have probably put that on top of the goalie section, but anyways, let's do it now. So Brady Shea is coming in. He's most likely going to be power play 2, not power play 1 time necessarily. He's at $7 million. $7 million is a little bit steep.
tough to digest for a cap league?
Tough to digest for a cap league. Absolutely. Do you want to start, Junior?
Sure. Look, he got 12 points on power play 2 last year. He was only averaging 59 minutes of power play with the Carolina Hurricanes, which I think we can all agree we thought it was more sometimes.
Yeah.
But especially when Burns fell off a cliff a little bit. So I see more of the same. What I might appreciate a little bit more if he is paired with Roman Yossi, because on daily faceoff it's projected that way, but no one really knows. That could help. That could help him get a little bit more points as well, 5-on-5. But all in all, I think he is about a 40. He could be about a 40-point defenseman. I think 47 maybe might be a career high, but I see him more on the 40-point range. But very effective player in the National Hockey League. I don't think very relevant in a fantasy league.
Maybe bottom of the lineup defenseman, right? 40-point defenseman can still be bottom
well,
of the
I'll tell you
lineup.
what. Roman Yossi, you guys mentioned before, 34 years old. Like an injury comes in here. Shea's on a great power play there. Like opportunity is there. Like a nice handcuff, I'd say.
Yeah, hope and a prayer, right?
Maybe not a prayer, but a little bit of a hope because he still does well 5-on-5.
For him to hit 50 points, I think that Yossi needs to miss time.
Yeah, of course.
So that's why I'm saying it's a little bit of a hope and a prayer there.
He's a waiver pickup if there's injuries.
Yeah, good call.
In cap league, I wouldn't touch him. His salary is just too high for the amount of points that he'll get.
Or you're desperate.
Yeah, but then
Zero D strategy.
0D strategy. I tried that once, by the way.
but yeah, I don't think it's fantasy relevant right now.
Okay. Let's go to the goalie tandems. So here there's one workhorse in UC Saros. He had a 906 save percentage last year, which is quite good. 2.86 goals against average. His goals saved above expected at 5-on-5, which is a stat that I mentioned last week that I really enjoy. He was 41st in the league. So maybe not the best of seasons. And if you have a 2.86 goals against average, it kind of makes a little bit of sense. He is the number one goalie, though. You are talking about somebody here that's going to be playing the majority of the games. They brought in a new backup in Scott Wedgwood. His goal saved above expected on 5-on-5 last year was 46th. So basically, a guy that could come in and spell Saros, and you're not losing too much when he does a spot start.
Listen, Saros is going to be the workhorse. I mean, we'll talk about another goalie who...
I mean, that's not rocket science that we're saying here, right?
No, there's going to be another team we're going to talk about today that has also a goalie who's going to be their main workhorse. So he's 100% fantasy related, especially if you're looking at wins, if you're looking at... So and the team got better than last year. I think last year his contract was hanging over him, which made it that he had a bit of an off year. Now that that's settled, he signed a long-term deal, got his money. I feel he'll be one of the top 5 goalies in the stats for next year.
To jump on what you said, not only was he unsigned for the next year, but he knew there was an elite prospect like right behind him, ready to come up or almost ready. So I think you're right. I think that could have played a part. However, although he's gonna be the lead dog, he's gonna get the most games. I do think his number of games played will dip, but his numbers will be better for it because Wedgwood with Ottinger played 32 games, and the year before in a mixture of teams played 37. So he's capable of that. I think for Saros' sake, if Wedgwood could play 30 games, 29 games, and Saros plays 51, 52, like if Saros can play between 50 and 55, I think he'll be better off than having to play 65 to 67.
No, he just signed an extension, 8 years, 7.74 on the cap. So not bad for a player that plays this
Solid.
much and is a solid number one, right? $61.92 million. Just a question for you. I think it starts because I'm still kind of learning Puckpedia. It's starting in 25-26 is new cap.
Right, he's got one full season left at $5 million.
Beautiful.
Absolutely, especially with all the additions they made.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how many more wins he'll have based off my projection of him playing closer to 55 games. But if he does play 65 to 67, he could hit 40 wins.
Yeah. Well, goal save above expected wasn't his favorite stat. They had last year Kevin Lankinen, who actually performed better when it came to goals saved above expected, but he only played 24 games. Saros had played 64 games this year. So it's something to look at in the sense that if he does lower the amount of games he plays, it might be beneficial for him. So even if it's just 5 games less, maybe he played 64 last year, maybe 58 would be ideal for Saros, keep him fresh for the playoffs as well. Anything else to add on goalies?
Well, we'll talk about we can transfer into their prospects.
Let's jump to Askarov.
All right, so let's jump straight to Askarov. Yeah.
So, well, listen, I'll just name...
Before you talk, Vint, I think everyone needs to know you own him.
Yes, I won't ask for it.
Oh, okay.
I'll just name
Bring out the flowers, everybody. Bring out the flowers.
I'll just name the prospects that Nashville has, and then we can just choose which ones we would want to talk about, because not all of them are going to be really relevant in here. So you obviously they have Askarov, they have Matthew Woods, they have Kemmel, they have Zachary Lutter, Luke Evangelista, who played last year, but he's still considered a prospect because he played under 100 games. Tanner Moldick, Fedor Svechkov, Reed Schaefer, Ryan Ufko, and Felix Nilsson. So listen, Askarov, I am not sure what they're doing here. I honestly don't know what they're doing with Askarov unless they're planning on trading him, and right now haven't gotten what they wanted. But he's played 2 or 3 years in the AHL, dominating the AHL, so his numbers weren't bad in the AHL. I thought this year was going to be the year where they were going to bring him up and at least be a backup, but they're not even doing that, so I don't know.
Well, Askarov, I think, is a trade chip here. You just signed Saros for 8 years, plus the 1 year that he has left on his contract, so that the next 9 years, Saros is there. It's not going to be a 1A, 1B system in Nashville. Saros is the guy in Nashville. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely a trade coming for Askarov, and hopefully, I mean, in my fantasy world that I'm considering, I'm saying go get a center. Go get somebody better than Novak to be your number 2 center, to play with Stamkos, to play with Marchessault. Right? That would be ideal, I think.
Yeah, but then that would ruin our Tommy Novak projections.
No, he'll be less than 60. But anyways, that's just my own opinion. If I was the GM of Nashville, that's how I would do it. Either way, though, he had a great year in the AHL last year. I think you were telling us last time.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, 911 save percentage, 239 goals against average. He had a pretty bad playoff, though. 3.25 goals against and an 882 save percentage. But, I mean, look, he played 2 games with Nashville. He played 2 games with Nashville last year, 1.4 goals against average and 943 save percentage in the NHL. Just 2 games, very small sample size. But look, he's under 3 goals a game, and he's at 911 save percentage in the AHL. It's pretty solid.
I just think Nashville kind of shot themselves in the foot with this extension for Saros. Why not try to trade Askarov before extending? Because right now, as an opposite GM, we know you're trying to trade Askarov. So,
but they don't have to trade him. That's the difference.
I know, but at the end of the day, I feel they lost a bit of the trading power because, well, as soon as you announce Saros 7 years, goalies are like, every GM is like, okay, well, I guess Askarov's out of the picture, and they're the ones we were trying to trade, right?
I think in the end, what might have made them be more patient is the fact that with all these additions, like you guys said, they have like a 2 to 3 year cup window. Something happens to Saros, at least you have Askarov. if something happens to Saros and Askarov not there, yikes.
Yeah, I don't think there's an urgency to trade Askarov,
Yeah.
but there is maybe a lowering in theoretical value because other GMs know that he's not your main guy.
But they could have brought him up as a backup.
I
But
they
that would have
still
been
do
the
next year.
logical thing
Yeah.
to do
But
instead of signing
I don't
Wedgwood.
know.
We'll see.
Any other prospects that you guys think are going to be fancy relevant this year?
Well, doesn't matter about this year. What I'm saying is that Joachim Kemmel is the next best prospect that they have,
for sure.
which you own.
Yes, I do.
All right, so you're not allowed talking about it. 67 games played with the Milwaukee Admirals last year. He had 16 goals, 25 assists for 41 points. Not maybe the greatest, but also it was his, I'll say, rookie season in the AHL. It's his first time he played more than 14 games in the AHL. So we're talking about a guy that's a scorer. He needs to play in a top 6 role. He's not going to have that in Nashville this year.
No.
So he's a guy that I could see one more year or two even in the AHL, and then being called up to be a top 6er in Nashville after that.
I
so-
think he's their number one call up if a forward gets injured.
Yeah, could be. You have any other?
I'm just going to touch on Luke Evangelista just because I have him, so I follow him a little more.
Oh, no wonder you thought he'd go up in value.
I just think, look, he had 39 points in 80 games last year. I do think, and he played 0 shifts, okay, with Forsberg, 0. His most consistent lineman, like I said earlier, was Tommy Novak. I think as he gets more experience and gets better, he'll probably have that opportunity. I think at some point in this next year, he will have an opportunity, and it'll be up to him to grab the bull by the horns and take advantage of it. I think, look, he's still on his ELC. In a dynasty league, it's someone nice to stash because he's already in the NHL and hasn't been given that opportunity yet, but has been progressing. But if given that opportunity to play on a line with Forsberg or Stamkos, like that's 2 solid lines they have there. If he can make his way in the top 6, could be a nice a league winner. Is that what they call him?
But like we were saying, if Nyquist gets bumped down to the third line, someone's going to need to take his position, right?
Yeah.
So if you're thinking Evangelista will be the first one who gets a shot at it. So maybe he might, how he might progress up in the points.
All right, final thoughts and predictions. Well, Dom Luszczyszyn's model had Nashville as the 6th best net offseason upgrades. Well, we spent a lot of time talking about Nashville, and there was a lot of changes in Nashville. So it's going to be a fun season to see how all these players mesh together and how they create a winning team or a playoff team that goes deep. Because, I mean, if you're bringing in these guys, that's what you're hoping for.
Or it could go the other way, where a team that
It just doesn't
brings
blend.
in a lot of new players doesn't blend. This is all on coaching, right? The coaching, Brunette has to really get these guys all together. But the thing is, I think they brought enough veterans like Marshall and Stamkos are veterans that are going to be more adaptable than if you bring in a young player, let's say like Johnny Gaudreau in Columbus and stuff like that.
All right.
Well, let's go from a team that made a lot of changes to a team that barely made any.
All right. That's very well put. St. Louis Blues is our next team up on the docket. 43 wins, 33 losses. We don't talk about overtime losses
We don't
here.
talk about Bruno. No,
I can tell
too
you're a
much
father.
Encanto, yeah.
Last year's power play rankings, poor. 25th in the league. They only converted on 18% of their power plays. Who's in? We have Matthew Joseph in, who's a good third liner. Alexander Texier and Radek Faksa out. Kevin Hayes. So, well, I'm just going to touch on Kevin Hayes a little bit. Addition by subtraction. Let's put it that way. To your players,
Be nice.
91 point. We don't predict anybody on this team to be a 91 point player or higher. But we do predict 2 guys to be in the tier 2, 80 to 90 points. And we're going to start with their number 1 center, Robert Thomas. Go ahead.
Me?
Me?
I love this guy. I absolutely love this guy. I try to acquire him in a trade almost once a year. Yep. I also dangled Barkov in trying to get him at one point. Wasn't doing it. Anyhow, 26 goals, 60 assists, 86 points last year in a full 82 games. I think we can expect Robert Thomas going forward to be a point per game center in the National Hockey League. He scored a career high 26 goals with a very fair shooting percentage of 15.3. 27 power play points. He plays shorthanded. He does it all. I see more of the same for Robert Thomas. He's clearly the number one guy on the... He's the number one center. He's the number one guy on the power play. He plays shorthanded. He's a guy of all situations. He's a legit number one center in the league.
Yeah, listen, he's St. Louis. Like we said, they didn't do much change, right? So they're copy pasting what they did last year to this year. He played over 20 minutes a game. I don't see that changing at 25 years old. His line mate had an off season, so if his line mate, which is the other player we have in that tier, produces as much as we think he will, well, that's just going to help Thomas hit that goal of 80 to 90 points.
At 8.125 cap hit, I am hoping that point per game continues. And the only reason he doesn't reach that is if he's not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I see it.
Because in the last 3 seasons, he's been there. 72 games, 77 points. 73 games, 65 points. 82 games, 86 points. So he's been consistent with a point per game player.
Right. He's just missed 10 games or more.
Exactly.
Almost his entire career. Right? So last year was his first time ever hitting 82 games. Hopefully that continues because you never want to see somebody not hitting their goals due to that. I like this player. I think that, like you guys said, point per game moving forward and probably for the next 5 years going to be a point per game player. So this is a safe bet for somebody that, his cap hit is not outrageous. You're making 80 points at an $8.1 million contract. It makes a lot of sense to me. I don't see, like you said, shooting percentage 15.3. His career average is 14.8. We're barely talking about any changes there. He did take 170 shots last year, which was the most in his career. That's something that I'm hoping continues because his 3-year average is 141. So
he's getting that shooter mentality.
He needs to continue that shooter mentality if he's going to keep putting up points like this.
A lot of times when a young player comes in the league, it's always like, hey, let me give the puck to the vets, give the puck. Maybe he's feeling a bit more confident.
It's his team now. There's no one. There's
right.
no vet.
O'Reilly was there for a while. Yeah.
He's the veteran, right? So he's the team. And then if we're pushing to the next player who we think is going to be in the tier 2, 80 to 90 points, Jordan Kyrou. So their line mates, their chemistry has been phenomenal. At the beginning of the year, I think Kyrou this year
he started very slow.
Well, he had a bit of a beef, let's say, with the coach. So
actually, not a bit. It was quite a public display.
Yeah. So I think that pushed him back. But he had an off year and he still had 31 goals, 67 points. So I just see him with the new coach. As soon as they replaced the coach, you saw that he got comfortable again.
Did they announce the new coach yet?
No, it's Brunette.
Oh, Brunette's the coach of the St. Louis Blues. Nice.
So I think that's... Oh, man, that Brunette was Nashville. Who's Nashville?
I'm sorry. I'm getting confused now.
Brunette is Nashville.
Brunette is Nashville. You're absolutely right.
And St. Louis
I'm trying to remember.
Wasn't it the guy who went to Toronto, St. Louis?
It was Berube.
Berube, and who did they replace him with? I think it was Mike Yeo, maybe.
No, he was assistant there.
He was the assistant.
It's Drew Bannister.
Drew Bannister, yes.
So there you go. So I think...
Who used to be a player, by the way.
And Claude Julien is his assistant coach.
So you see, I feel he's in a better environment for Jordan Kyrou. So I expect the 31 goals to hit at least 40 goals for this year, which is just going to help him and Robert Thomas to hit that tier 2 points that we're talking about.
Yeah, not much change for Kyrou necessarily. What I will say is that Kyrou was a better defensive player this year than he was in the previous year because he was a minus 38 the previous year. He was a minus 12 only this year. His shooting percentage was 12.4. His average is 13.2. So we're kind of seeing a little bit of a change there. 26 years old, right? So you're saying 25 is Thomas, 26 is Kyrou. They're going to grow together. They're going to keep going together. They share the number one power play duties together. 18 minutes of time on ice. I think he's going to go back into that 70 point to 79 point pace. I don't think he's going to necessarily go higher than that.
Yeah, I think his ceiling is point per game. Like when he has a
Yeah.
career year, it might be a point per game. But I
He's
see
only
him.
hit it once. That pace.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying like if ever he hits like his career high will be a point per game. I think he lives around the 75 point range.
So you guys think he should be in a tier 3 and not tier 2?
I think he's a tier 3 player. But
I'm
Again-
I'm curious to see what a better team if it helps him a little bit more.
But are they
What
a better
better team?
team? They didn't do
they
anything.
didn't do anything.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying
No, you're
I
saying
st-
if
I
they
th-
eventually
if
do
they
something.
eventually become a much better team, if he can reach that point per game pace.
Right now, Jordan Kyrou at $8 million. It's not a horrible contract for somebody that puts up 75 to 80 points. So I'm not going to belittle that. It's a
Look,
little bit expensive, but it's
If
not
he hits
crazy.
40 goals, he'll be a point per game player like Vince said.
Yeah.
I see him more at the 35, 40.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
He's only hit once 83 point pace
Yeah.
in his career, and that was 3 years ago. So that's the part that scares me a little
we'll
bit
see
for
if the
tier 2.
environment is going to
Yeah.
help him this year compared to last year.
Yeah.
In the tier 3, we don't have any players that we think are going to hit the tier 3. You guys think Kyrou should be in that section of our tiers. So we'll go to the tier 4, which is between 60 and 69 points. And we have Pavel Buchnevich.
can I start with this one?
Who
Go
will
ahead.
give you 5 points in one game and go no points in 10 games.
I actually would have him at least in tier 3, pushing tier 2.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. Last year he had an off year at the projected pace of 65 points. The year before that, projected 87 points. The year before, 85, and the year before that, 74. I think the biggest key with Pavel Buchnevich, and like it is with most people, stay healthy.
Mhm.
Stay healthy because
He played 80 games last year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Played 80.
but prior to that, 63, and then anyhow, 73. He just needs to stay healthy. A lot of the times he played injured from when I was following him. Anyways, now that he has his contract, long-term security, those are the three guys: Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, Buchnevich. They don't always play together. Last year they were fluctuating from line to line.
Well, yeah,
Well,
Kyrou at one point was on line 3, I think.
Yeah.
To your point, Kyrou, I think, didn't play all season with Thomas. And Buchnevich ended up becoming the second line center for this team.
Yeah,
Because Kevin Hayes is just horrendous.
Yeah.
like right now they have him centering Braden Shen and Brandon Saad, with Kyrou, with Thomas and Neighbors.
Yeah.
They got some work to do.
The team is, we were talking about it a little bit before we started this episode. The team's a little bit in a shambles of, are we a retool? Are we a reset? Are we a rebuild?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know where St. Louis stands.
I don't think they know either, because during the season, the rumor was they were possibly trading Buchnevich.
Yes.
And then that told everybody, okay, it's a rebuild. And then in the end, they just decided to sign him to an extension. I don't know if maybe changing the coach had something to do with that.
Maybe,
We'll
but
see.
Buchnevich's contract, I don't mind it at all. He is currently at a $5.8 million contract for this year before his $8 million contract kicks in next
Oh crap! He went to
6
$8 million.
years.
I gotta think of. By the way, I have.
It's only a $2.2 million raise.
Yeah, I know. But
When
I've-
your cap going up every year, it's not horrible. And if he does end up hitting his 80 point or 85 point paces that he's done before, I like the $8 million.
Rantanen's due for a contract next year.
We're not talking about your team. But
I was banking though on Kyrou and Buchnevich this year, and I think they're probably the reason I didn't finish closer to the. I finished third and not second or first.
he only had 18 points on the power play. So out of his 63 points that he had, it's his power play percentage points wise wasn't out of this world either. Hopefully, it continues being number one power play. I don't see anybody else really taking his spot
No,
as number one power play, and he gets back to that point per game pace.
So speaking about the power play, Nick, we have no D-man in our top 1, 2, 3, or 4. And they've had a kind of, say, bad news on one of their premier D-man that they paid money to be their first pairing D-man, which is Torrey Krug, who might miss the whole season. Who's there after him?
Well, after him, you have Falk.
Okay.
So Falk was pretty much the only other player that saw power play time other than Krug last year. He was slated as the second PP guy. He only played 35% of the power play last year. That's how you know that he was a second PP guy. Only averaged 1.49 power play time on ice per game. So not anything to write home about. He only had one power play goal, 7 power play points all season, and he finished with 30 points. So his point pace was 41. So a little bit like Brady Shea, where you're not really talking about a player that is necessarily top of your lineup on the defense. You're looking at your bottom of your lineup, maybe not even roster bowl, maybe waiver wire. If he's power play 1 all season, those points might go up back to a 50-point pace, and that might be a little bit more interesting for Falk.
Do you think Perunovic puts pressure on that and maybe takes over that that first power play unit? He averaged 2 minutes of power play time last year, Perunovic. That's a lot.
Well, I was
a player that wasn't Torrey Krug, right?
I was actually going to come to that. Exactly right. So Perunovic is the person that takes advantage of the fact that Krug might be out all year. And if Perunovic comes in, he's a player that might take that power play 2 right off the bat and might fight Falk for that power play 1. It might be an interesting year for owners of Perunovic.
I mean, it's make or break at this point. I mean, he's 25, but if he can't cut the top power play this year, then I think we can officially mark an X on him as a prospect fantasy relevant player, maybe.
Yeah, as a point producing defenseman. I wouldn't X him as a NHL defenseman.
Yeah,
but maybe as a point producer defenseman, maybe it's not his thing.
Look, Falk only played 60 games last year, so if he misses time again, it's Perunovic's job to lose. So I really don't see anything else there that could really take a step forward this year. I just wanted to jump over the goalies 2 seconds to look at their prospects, right?
Let's go to who suffers from having such a terrible defensive line.
Well, let's. You want to talk about prospects, Nick?
I was going to talk about prospects to see if there's any defensemen there that might be future.
So is this a team that is waiting for one of their prospects to snatch up one of the top 6 positions?
And on defense?
On offense.
I mean, on offense, they have the guys.
That's it.
Dalibor Dvorsky, Jimmy Snuggerud, Zachary Bolduc to a certain extent. There's Stenberg as well.
Because
on defense, they don't have much, though, other than Adam Yurchek, which they drafted this year.
Zachary Bolduc and Zach Dean both had time with the St. Louis Blues last year. I think Bolduc played 25 games, 9 points. Zach Dean played 9 games, no points. Do we see one of those 2 players snatching up a top 6 role on this team?
Not top 6. Not top 6. I mean,
Jimmy Snuggerud, from what we're hearing, is going back to the NCAA.
Probably.
And Dvorsky, if I'm not mistaken, is also not NCAA, but he's going back to the juniors, unless they're...
So Dvorsky and Snuggerud are their best prospects, right? And both of them would really help this team because you would move Buchnevich back to the wing that way and have a Dalibor Dvorsky setting them up between him and Braden Chen. Snuggerud would be another one of those players that comes in right away and kind of takes over, maybe not a top 6 off the bat, but he would be on that third right winger spot right there. But they brought in Texier. They still have Shen. This team, like we said,
brought in Faxa. I think all the players they brought in are all depth players, and that tells me that maybe they don't think Dvorsky or Stenberg they're ready.
No, but is it worth it? Is it worth it rushing them to the NHL?
No,
especially
no point,
that
for sure.
Like I don't feel St. Louis is a playoff team this year, so why force these young players into the NHL when they can have another year of development in their juniors or NCAA teams?
Well, look, they have like 4 forwards, either RFA or UFA after this year. So
Yeah,
The opening will be there next year.
They're goalies.
Regarding their goalies, Jordan Binnington had a phenomenal year last year.
Yeah, because
And he went under the radar.
because
I
he
think
kept
in
his
Lama,
cool.
Yeah, in
he was
Lama,
normal.
he was actually on the waiver wire. Nobody picked him up all season. Now that league is very cap oriented, right? So a little bit different. But Binnington had a very good season. 913 save percentage, 2.84 goals against average. He played 57 games, clear number one game numbers, right? He was 16th in the league in goals saved above expected on 5-on-5 with a 0.281. So 16th in the league is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Considering that there's players there
Reasonable.
that play 20 games that are considered a little bit higher, right? For 57 games, that's a very good number. And his backup, Joel Hofer, 913 save percentage, same exactly as Binnington. 2.65 goals against average. I thought I made a mistake there, but it's actually, pretty much similar numbers. And his goal save above expected on 5-on-5 was 11th in the league, 30 games played, right? So this tandem looks like it's going to continue, obviously, this year. And eventually Hofer might take over, but he's not ready yet. Or it's going to be closer to 50-50. What are we looking at?
I think it'll be a gradual transition from Binnington to Hofer, but I don't think that's next year. I think he does get a boost in playing time maybe next year, Hofer. Will they ride the hot hand if they come out winning and they're competing in games? Maybe. But look, 3 years left for Binnington. I think by year 2,
$6 million, I think.
$6 million for 3 years.
Binnington $6 million. Hofer is at $775, and then he's an RFA next year.
I say Binnington is still the guy this year. And then after that, they'll probably start giving Hofer more games to start preparing him to be the lead dog from when they're ready to win. But I still see Binnington getting the majority of the starts.
Yeah, I don't see them rushing Hofer into getting 50 games this year. I feel they'll send Binnington to the Wolves, which they did last year, and he did well, especially on a team that wasn't very good. So I feel they're just gonna keep on doing that. He's gonna get his 30 games, 35 games. But I still think Binnington will get more of a percentage. This year might go 60-40 instead of 70-30, but I still think Binnington will get the majority of games. And it could also be a trade bait, right? You got to give your starting goalie you want to trade some games to see if some teams will bite.
Well, final thoughts. We kind of said it throughout the whole thing, right? 14th in Dom's model. Slight improvement by getting rid of Hayes and adding a little bit more depth. But there's really no real changes that are fantasy relevant for this team. So copy-paste a little bit from last year, and maybe some internal growth from Perunovic might be interesting. But that's about it that I see here. All right, moving on to the Utah No-Names.
The Utah, formerly known as Arizona Coyotes.
Yes.
36 wins, 41 losses. We don't count overtime losses in this podcast. Last year's power play ranking 15th.
Not bad.
Actually, better than the previous team we spoke about. 22% conversion rate. Who's in? Well,
Some decent names.
Mikhail Sergachev is in.
Someone who will make their power play better.
John Marino is in. Ian Cole is in. These are legitimate NHL defensemen. Out, J.J. Moser, Travis Dermott, who I can't believe he was actually a top sixer, and Josh Brown. So, player tiers, we have nobody projected as 91 plus on this team. Tier 2, we have nobody projected between 80 and 90 points. But there might be one player that might actually reach that, and that is our Tier 3 winner, which is Clayton Keller. So Clayton Keller, I'm going to throw it off to Junior to start. And what do we think about Keller's progression? What do we think about him being in Utah right now? Does he still want to trade out of that team?
Did he want to trade?
Out of Arizona, his father kind of threw out some words out there that he wasn't very happy in Arizona. I mean, look, guys, it was a dumpster fire. The Arizona Coyotes was a mess. And they were playing out of Mullet Arena, which was a college rink.
Yeah. It was,
And
They're finally going to.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were done.
I'm never done. they're finally going to an actual NHL arena, and they're gonna be an actual freaking team with real ownership that is excited to be an owner of this team. So go ahead. What were you gonna say, Junior?
The more we learned about the owner, the more we could understand why it was a dumpster fire, right? And that was a lot of the problems the players had was not necessarily with the GM or the coach. It was always with the owner and the environment they were in.
Yeah.
Never clarity. Even knowing they were selling and moving to Utah, the players still had no idea.
Yeah.
And we're still being told you're staying in Arizona. So it was rough to have to tell their families that they're moving on such short notice and so on. Anyhow, I feel bad for the players, but at the end of the day, we're here to evaluate their fantasy value. So let's start with Clayton Keller, who I think can average out to be a point per game player because, he's done it once already and almost done it a second time. So this year he had 76 points in 78 games, just under a point per game. The year before, 86 points in 82 games. So he seems to be finding that stride, right? I think going to Utah, bringing in some NHL defensemen, let alone a guy like Mikhail Sergachev, Logan Cooley's coming up. They have a decent young crop. I think everybody will be a little bit rejuvenated. He is their best player and will be their best player. I think you can expect him to start being a point per game player. 30 points on the power play. And the power play got better just by the addition of Sergachev. Because Durzi, as much as he did pretty well, he wasn't a good power play point producer for the Arizona Coyotes. So I expect a point per game Clayton Keller.
Yeah, I believe he can get to that. I'm just not convinced with his surroundings yet, meaning his centers and his forward casting. Sergachev will definitely help on the power play end, even on the 5-on-5 end. It will help, but I'm just not convinced with his surroundings. I feel, yes, Cooley was there and Cooley had a very good rookie season, but we all know that there's that rookie season and then there's that wall that rookies hit on the second year. So I feel 70 to 79 is safe for him to be there. But if other players around him do elevate their game, he can get into that point per game. Because we even had at one point Hayton, right? Hayton was supposed to be their number one centerman at some point. But last year was just
going to flop a bit.
Yeah, exactly. But I think he's going to get his opportunity this year.
Well, Clayton Keller, Vince, to your point, has had 76 points last year. But the year before that, he had 86.
Mm-hmm.
And last year, he missed a few games. He was on an 80-point pace. So we're talking about a point per game player. And point per game players are... I see him reaching that point per game again. I do see him as a tier 2 player. And not because I own him in LPHL, by the way. The reason why is exactly what you just said, actually. Logan Cooley and Barrett Hayton. I see Dylan Gunther is another one, right? They have a lot of young players on this team that will be progressing.
Hopefully.
And if
should be progressing.
Well, should be progressing. But Logan Cooley, you're expecting him to progress. Even if he hits a little bit of the wall, by the way, is the first year. The second year is a sophomore slump. But if he hits that sophomore slump, it's not a guarantee.
No.
So if Cooley does a little bit better, if Hayton does a little bit better, if Gunter stays on the team the whole year and keeps producing points, Clayton Keller is going to gain from that just from attrition. So I do see him as a point per game player moving into next year. I don't see him as a 91-plus player, that's for sure. But tier 2, for me, it makes a lot of sense. Last year, he had 14.5 shooting percentage. The year before that, 16.6. The year before that, 15.8. So it's around his actual
average. Because
right?
His average
last
is
3-year
12,
average.
but like they counted the first few years he played in the NHL.
Yeah, the last 3 years average is exactly where it is, 15%, right? He has 228 shots on goal last year, 223 the year before that. So again, we're not talking about somebody that's way out there in...
No.
He overproduced last year. Minus 20, Well, Arizona was a little bit of a dumpster fire. That's going to get better, right? 19 minutes of time on ice. I see that maybe staying around there.
Okay.
19 to 20 minutes of time on ice. And he was an 80-point pace last year. So that's why I'm saying tier 2 for Clayton Keller. Moving on to maybe one of his future line mates, or if not his line. Oh, he was at $7 million, by the way. So very
Which is
good.
fantastic. Value.
Very, very good deal. And he still has 3 years left on that
Yeah.
$7 million deal. So fantastic value in caps leagues. Moving on to one of his line mates, Nick Schmaltz.
Listen, this guy, every year he's there, and every year he produces. It's he's in leagues. The one thing with this guy is, if you see his name in position, you'll see center, right wing, left wing. So you can't go if you're in a positional league where you have to dress position players. You can't go wrong with this guy. He's always, like in the last 3 years, 59 points, 58 points, 61 points. But the 59, 58 were on 63 games. So we can say last year he took a bit of a dip when it came to his points.
Dumpster fire.
Listen, the problem is Arizona last year was just like, for players who went through that, you have to congratulate the way they did it, because not everybody could have done what they did.
They didn't even have locker rooms.
No, no, it was like it didn't make sense. So I feel with Utah now, the owner has shown already that he wants to win by acquiring Sergachev, by making these acquisitions. I feel now they're settled. They have an arena that's not a hockey arena, but they have an arena where they'll have their own lockers. It will be,
Well, they'll have more than 5,000 people at the
It's
game.
going to be a professional setting.
It'll be a professional. Exact. That's the word I was looking for. It'll be a professional setting. So I feel all around their players will be in a better state of mind.
And because of that, it's an intangible in my eyes when I'm predicting Utah Hockey Club. And I'm saying that you're going to see a boost on everybody's numbers.
Yeah.
Everybody's
Especially
numbers are going to
early
get
on in
better
the season.
because you're in a new environment. You're excited. You want to show these fans, new fans, what you're made of. And you're finally in a professional setting
Well, look at the way
with a real owner.
look at the way Vegas came out on their inaugural
Seattle.
season. Seattle made the playoffs. So like that exists. It's real.
Yeah.
That boost of energy you're talking about is real.
If
And
you work for good people, you perform better.
that's
you wanna go into work.
100% true.
So for me, that's the way I'm looking at it.
To come back to Nick Schmaltz, so on Frozen Tools of Dauber, they actually split the season in quarters, and his final quarter was his most productive, 22 points in 21 games. His most common line mate in that fourth quarter, Clayton Keller. So if they could stick together, they can do a lot of good things. But Schmaltz is papier-mâché. That's a big thing. 79, 63,
Loose leaf
63,
paper.
52, like 40 1 year. So like he needs to stay healthy, and if he stays healthy and he plays with Clayton Keller, he can be that 60 to 69 point guy.
Okay, what do we think about rookie last year, who held his ground? Logan Cooley. He went on a 44 points, if I'm not mistaken. Last
Yeah,
year.
44 in 82 games. 44 in 82 games. I mean, naturally he progresses, right?
Look, we had mentioned it before. A 40-point
Rookie.
rookie season for a forward is a very good rookie season. So, guys, he's 20 years old. He just hit 20 by the end of the season, kind of thing, or near the end of the season in May. So he started the season as a 19-year-old in the NHL playing center. I mean, you can't ask for a worse situation to start in the National Hockey League. So 44 points, 20 goals, 24 assists, very good. Very respectable numbers for me. And that's why I think that he's going to have a boost this year. Well, how much of a boost is it going to be? Is it enough to put him in the tier 4, 60 points? I think that's maybe a little bit pushing it. But I could see him hitting 50 points to 55 points in this coming season. And that's going to start making him fantasy relevant in a lot of leagues.
If Hayton
Deeper leagues anyways.
If Hayton starts slow like he did last year, that could push Cooley up to play with Keller and Schmaltz, right? So
Yeah, and don't forget, going to a new city, they kind of, especially that owner, kind of wants to put on a show. Does he put Cooley, Keller together? Like,
It's
That-
two guys
that-
under 6 foot, though.
I
don't
know, but that stuff all comes into play as well. But what I like is that he finished strong, 15 points in 21 games, and only averaging a minute of power play a game. So I see him possibly pushing the 60 points, but maybe not quite getting there next year.
Is that minute only
power play time on ice on average for the fourth quarter of the season?
for the fourth quarter? Okay,
quarter.
because
'Cause-
Dauber Tools, I have here 2 minutes of power play
'cause
time per
his
game.
first quarter was at 326, and every quarter he was diminishing in ice time on power
And
play.
a lot of that has to do with the rookie wall,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Players don't actually
especially
play
NCAA
82
players,
games
exactly.
against NHL competition. It's very hard as a 19-year-old to play that, right? So it makes sense that they lowered his time on ice a little bit to try to give him a little bit of a break. But I see next year really coming up a little bit more there. All right, Logan Cooley.
Shall we move on to our first defenseman?
Mikhail Sergachev. So Sergachev is coming over from Tampa Bay, obviously. He had a very scary injury at the end of the season or halfway through the season. I'm forgetting the exact
He
time
played
frame.
34 games.
So halfway through the season about. He is... Well, I want your declaration. Is he or is he not?
No,
He's
No,
not
no,
a number
he's
one
not.
defenseman.
he's not. And you know what? I'll next episode we'll start the show, and I'll give you my criterias for a legitimate NHL number one defenseman.
Again,
No, like I'll write them out. This way, everyone can follow along, and I'm not just saying he is and he's not, and he is and he's not. But essentially, no, he doesn't. Does he have the build to become one? Yes, but right now he doesn't produce enough offense to be that legitimate number one defenseman. 2 years ago, he had 64 points in 79 games, but prior to that, he wasn't really fantasy relevant in terms of points. He has everything you need to be that guy. He plays shorthanded. He plays power play. If he can stay healthy now on Utah, like Vince said earlier, big opportunity. Does he take over Durzi's spot, which wasn't very effective on the power play? I think so. And with this young crop, I think they could really have an exciting power play. I can see him hitting possibly, I don't think he's going to go to 64, but if he can probably hit 50 to start in his first year, I take that.
So I think this is the first year he'll actually get power play minutes. Because with Tampa, he had Hedman who was in front of him. The year he had 64 points was the year Hedman got hurt for Tampa, which is why he was on the power play one, and he got 27 points in the power play.
Average 233 on the power play.
So I feel power play one with a talented... They are a very talented power play one. I mean, you put the Kellers, the Coolies, the Schmaltz together, it's still a decent power play. They ranked... What did they rank on the power play, Nick?
15th.
This year? 15th.
yeah, which is pretty good for a team that's so young.
Well, in Montreal slang, we say a Markov, who is the head of the power play.
A general.
A general, yeah. So I feel he could be that. So I see his points boosting into those 60 to 69.
Well, it's a very fair point. I mean, last year he averaged 34% of the power play time in Tampa Bay. That's second power play numbers, right? Not first power play numbers. So I do see him moving that up. Does he take over for Durzi? Most likely he's going to take over for Durzi on power play one.
Yeah, Durzi 16 points, averaging 3 minutes a game on power play is not very good.
Right. So I do see Sergachev hitting that power play one numbers. And if that is the case, he might hit that 60-point mark. And I see him definitely as a 50-point defenseman next year at a minimum.
And in a cap league with his salary,
He has a big salary.
yeah, that's it. So now he's a bit more worth it in a dynasty cap league, but in a league where it's a redraft, he is easily a top one. If you're dressing for defensemen, he's one of your four.
He's a
defensemen.
candidate to draft.
He's
for
a
sure.
candidate to draft, not in the top 5 rounds, but he's definitely a candidate this year to draft. Whereas, whereas
8.5 million, just
Yeah.
for those of you that wanted to know his salary cap. And he's only in year 2 of 8.
yeah,
So
What?
he,
26 years old.
26 years old, yeah, entering that those prime
those
years.
prime
that-
years of in his life.
Yeah.
Goaltending, which was Dipsy Doodle with with Arizona last year. So we had Connor Ingram save percentage .907, goals against 2.91, games played 50. His saves against what, Nick?
Goal saves against
Goal save against. What's the E stand
expected.
for? Expected. There we go.
at 5-on-5.
Is .257, which is 18th in the league. And then the other goalie was Valimaki, right?
Vilmalka.
Vamalka.
Vilmalka.
Valimaki, Jesus, Murphy. Save
Valimaki was
percentage.
their defense.
That's true, it was. Save percentage under 900, so at 8.895. Goals against 3.35. Games played 30. Goals save against expected.
Yes.
5
Goal
on 5.
saves above expected.
Above expected. Minus .267, so 56th in the league. Did Connor
Yikes.
Ingram do enough to take that number 1 job? Which we have to remember, especially on Dauber was very high on Connor Ingram when he was with Nashville, saying that he could have been easily a superstar number 1 goalie.
Well, so goal save above expected was 8 goals saved above expected in total, right? 50 games played. He had an absolutely great year. And when you're saying 50 games played, and where Vemjalka only had 30, and Viljalka was the starter the
1.
year before, the
Yeah.
number 1 the year before. I think Connor Ingram has shown that he is the number 1 goalie on this team. And I could only see his numbers getting better now that you added a Sergachev, now that you added John Marino, who's a very good defensive defenseman.
Ian Cole.
You added an Ian Cole. All of a sudden, that defense starting to look legitimate, right? Sean Durzee's Valimaki, Kesserling. Okay, there's some question marks there about how good defensively those guys are, but at least they're paired with guys now.
How many teams have guys like that?
Right. So Connor Ingram, I think, has shown that he's the number 1 goalie, and we've seen the emergence of it last year.
I agree.
I think in leagues with starting 2 goalies, I think Ingram could be one of the steals for next year.
1.7 million.
Cap wise, opportunity wise, I mean, if we're talking Lama,
I just
Have-
traded for him.
that's a big acquisition. That
I-
guy could win you a league.
I traded Philip Messar straight up for Connor Ingram.
Yeah. There you go.
Did you hear they're trading for a number 1 goalie? All right, moving on to the prospects. We've got guys like Dylan Gwenter, who played 44 games last year. Tija Gilna, drafted this year. Dmitry Simashev, Daniel Butt, Michael Rabal, the goalie. Maverick Lamoureux, Josh Doan, Cole Baudouin. There's
It's,
guys like Michelli in the lineup already.
It's a very nice prospect pool that they have right now.
So I just wanted to mention, like, I'll leave you Dylan Gunther.
Oh, thank you,
Because
sir.
last
I
year
appreciate that.
you spoke to me about Dylan Gunther. I said, he hasn't done anything yet. He's only been doing things in the AHL. Comes into the NHL, actually starts producing right away. So I'll leave you talk about Gunther. I wanted to talk about somebody that I think is a little bit interesting, and that's Josh Doan. Because he came in, and Josh Doan is playing 3rd-line minutes right now, but potentially could be a 2nd liner on this team.
Partial breakaway waiver wire pickup suggestion last year.
22 years old, so very, very young. It was his rookie season last year, and he only played 11 games, but he got 9 points. So,
Hence
Right?
why he was a waiver wire pickup.
hence why 67-point pace, but it's such a small sample size that it's impossible to really
All right,
tell.
tier
right?
1, tier 4.
21 shot percentage. That's going to go down. But still, interesting player to keep an eye on out. Have him on your watch list. Maybe a dynasty sleeper.
Young prospect to have on your team, for sure. But the rest of the prospects, listen, I don't see any of them having any fantasy relevancy this year. Gunter is the big, and there's even Matthias Michelli, who's 23 years old, who played a full season.
Another waiver wire guy last year.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Iginla is really the future.
Iginla is. Listen, Dmitry Simashev for me is their future as their rock solid defensive defenseman. I don't feel he's the an offensive defenseman. In nets, they're banking on Harbaugh to develop into a number one goalie. So their prospect pool is very, very good.
Yeah.
Like if Simashev and Lamoureux play on the same line, that's two defensemen who are over 6'5".
That's going to be a tough defensive pair to play against.
You know, so
Even Daniel Blett is huge.
It's huge.
exactly.
Huge.
So Junior Dylan Gunter.
Well, the reason I spoke to you about him last year often was because every time he was playing in exhibition games, I was noticing him, and he was doing well. And again, who's lining up on the other end? Who knows? It's an exhibition game. But you still want to stand out as a young kid when you play these games. And he was, so I kept my eye on him, and he was scoring goals in particular. So last year, he finally got his opportunity, and 18 goals, 17 assists, 35 points in 45 games. I mean, I don't even think I was expecting that out of him.
His shooting percentage wasn't out of this world.
14.9 shooting percentage. The year before, he played 33 games. He had 15 points. 11.3 shooting percentage. Look, the second half of the season, they paired him with Logan Cooley. So I guess that's the 1-2 combo they're trying to build the chemistry with. And look, he had 14 points in the third quarter and 18 points in the fourth quarter of the season. He increased his shots on goal by 20 in the final quarter. So he went from 42 shots on goal in 20 games to 66. His ice time increased gradually, so the coach has faith in him. He's a huge power play guy. I expect Dylan Gwenter, when all is said and done and he's in his prime, to easily be a 35 goal scorer. I think he can flirt with 40. I want to see a little more before I go out on a limb and say he's a 40 goal scorer. But between 30 and 35, I think should be a regular thing for him going forward.
Well, I think Utah fans, coming into this team, you finally have a team. Congratulations. Not only that, but you are actually getting a good young team that's finally on the cusp of producing some real highlight reel goals. You have Gunther Iginla coming up. You still have Clayton Keller, who you should be buying his jersey nonstop here. I think I'm going to buy it just because I'm a fan. And Dom's model stated that you had the fourth best offseason out of all the teams based solely on the amount of improved defense, NHL caliber defense. You have Connor Ingram, who's really young still, seeming to come into his own. So it's a nice 1-2 punch with Vemjalka. And I'm really excited to see Utah this year. And whether they're the Utah Yetis or not,
we don't know yet.
We don't know yet, but that seems to be the rumor right
we
now.
putting a bet on them?
Congratulations on having a team.
Are we putting a bet on them to make the playoffs?
And I'm sorry for the Arizona fans that lost their team, but who knows?
So just to quickly follow.
With the new owner, they might get them back.
Just quickly to fall off on what Junior said. From October to January, he was averaging about 12 minutes to 13 minutes of ice time. From February,
we're talking about Dylan Gwenter.
Dylan Gwenter. February, March, April, he was averaging 16.30 seconds of ice time. In those 3 months, he got 28 points, which is half the points that he got for the year. So you saw that he ended the year very strong because they gave him the opportunity to.
Yeah.
So I feel this year could be his real breakout season.
And the last thing I'll mention is one of the
I already said the goodbyes. But
I know, but I want to
You were
piggyback
twirly.
again on what he said is, as a young kid and a fantasy owner, the one thing that's you can count on is when a coach has confidence in his players. So when a coach has confidence in 2 18-year-olds like that, you can bank on them to continue their success.
Okay. Let's
Boom.
move on to the Winnipeg Jets.
Uh-oh, what's happening?
Well, Dom's model stated that you had the worst offseason out of every team in the league. And please, Junior, remind me, how many teams are there in the league?
32.
32 teams. So
Worst.
look, they had a great season last year. So they had 54 wins, 24 losses last year. Great on a great regular season, really.
But on
Vezina Trophy winner in Hellebuck.
On Hellebuck's back, they had a great season.
The power play ranked 22nd in the league, which is not that great.
No, not for a team that finished with as many points as they did.
18.8% conversion rate. Who's in? Capo Kakkonen is in. Who's out? That's all that's in. Who's out? Well, this is why I think that they were saying that you didn't have a great offseason is because, unfortunately, you lost Tyler Toffoli, you lost Sean Monahan, you lost Brendan Dillon, Nate Schmidt, and Laurent Brossois, who was probably one of the better goalies last year for a 1B or backup goalie, right? Last year. Guys, you still have some great players out there, and I'm going to give my take on all this as well. But you have a tier 2 player. You don't have anybody in tier 1, which is 91 points plus, but you do have a tier 2 player in Kyle Connor, 80 to 90 points. Vince, why don't you start us off with Kyle Connor?
Listen, Kyle Connor produces every year. He's a goal scorer. He likes to get into the dirty areas. Last year, if I get the stats over here, last year 65 games, 61 points. It's almost a point per game pace. And listen, he got injured last year, so obviously it took a step back. But he's been the most consistent player that we've seen, like 93 points, 80 points, 61 points, 50 points in 56 games, 73 points in 71 games. So he's proven that he could be a point per game player. So that's why we put him in the tier 2 section. He's a goal scorer. So I mean, last year 34 goals in 65 games. So that's gonna go up higher this year. So I just feel this is a no-brainer. He is their best player, and he will produce. And I think his salary is still reasonable, if I'm not mistaken, right now.
7.1.
Which is reasonable for the amount of points he's not reasonable. It's a steal.
It's a steal for the amount of points
he puts up. So.
And he still has this year coming up and next year under that salary.
Look, a shooter is going to shoot.
Yeah.
And that's what Kyle Connor is, a shooter. He averages almost 280 shots per game. Per season.
Jeez.
Per season. His shooting percentage is in the 15%, which is what he got. He's a goal scorer, and he's about a point per game player at his ceiling, except for that 1 year he got 93. I agree having him between the 80 and 90 point range. Look, there's not much to say about this guy other than imagine if they had a good power play.
Yeah.
22nd in the league on the power play. If they can improve that.
But could it be that they were 22nd because he missed 20 games?
I'll get to that.
A bit of everything, I'd say.
But basically, well, I'll get to it now then.
Yeah, you're up, Nick.
All right, I'm up.
What do you think?
Look, Kyle Connor.
It doesn't matter what you... Okay.
65 games played only last year. And I find that Winnipeg will go as far as Kyle Connor could take them. Because I really think that he is the catalyst of this team. He is their best player by far offensively. And he could put up 81 points or more if he stays healthy for a full season.
Mm-hmm.
So, like last year, he had 221 shots on goal, only in 65 games. He averages about 280 to 300 shots on goal, let's say. You're talking about somebody that's top power play. You're talking about somebody that could hit 40 goals if he stays healthy for the full season. So he did 32 the year before in 2022. I think that was a little bit of an off year shooting percentage wise, but this year, if he stays healthy, I see him hitting back that 40 goals stage, and that's who Kyle Connor is. He's their goal scorer, right? When it comes to the next player on the list, well, it's Mark Scheifele, who's his line mate, and Mark Scheifele is a type of player that is very controversial because he just got an extension, right? Him and Hellebuck just got extensions. and Mark Scheifele, I believe, is 8.5 million now.
But he's proven to be a point per game player in his leagues. Like, I mean, in 2016, 2017, 82 points, 79 games. 2017, 2018, 60 points in 60 games. 2018, 2019 off season. 2019, 2020, 73 points in 71 games. 63 points in 56 games. 70 points in 67 games. So I feel he's one player that could easily move up to the tier 2 movement if everything comes together. I mean, last year he hit 72 points in 74 games. So I feel he can move up, especially playing with Kyle Connor the whole year. He could easily move up to a tier 2 player.
Yeah, I think his ceiling is a point per game. I don't know. He's a bit of a seesaw. So, it's up and down, up and down. He's not a bad player, but I'm saying, like, he'll have really good seasons and then average season. Really good season, average season.
One thing that they talk about Scheifele a lot is the fact that he has no defensive awareness whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
He has no work ethic defensively. Offensively, yes. And, for fantasy-wise, all we really care about is the offense. So even though he's a little bit polarizing in the sense that as a number one center, you kind of want somebody that could play both sides of the ice, I don't consider him a number one center necessarily, but 80 points average or 80-point paces that he does put up, I think that fantasy-wise, he's definitely a number one center. His salary isn't too expensive. It's a little bit expensive, but not too expensive if he actually plays all 82 games and hits that 80 points. So I don't see there's much to talk about Scheifele other than that. I don't think he loses anything here.
No, he is who he is. Same with Connor,
8.5 million. That's his salary for the next 7 years.
Yeah, so if he puts up a point per game, it's a very good salary for the amount of points he puts.
If he puts up a point per game, like he had 42 goals in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see him ever doing that again.
That was an outrageous shooting percentage.
It was a 20% shooting percentage. I don't think he's a 40 goal scorer necessarily, but he could hover around that 25 to 30.
Yeah, I can see that.
So at least that part is there. If Kyle Connor stays healthy all season, that's what's going to give Scheifele that boost to get back into that tier.
Yeah, because I think Connor can survive without Scheifele. I think Scheifele dips without Connor.
Correct. Talking about tier 4 players, well, I'm going to start with Nikolai Ehlers.
Ooh.
Because
softball there, curveball.
Softball.
To a curveball there, Nick.
We make up our own sayings here, but Ehlers is
a softie.
Is a softie.
He is definitely a softie.
He's a papier mâché.
He's a
Loose
shooter.
leaf paper is the term that we always use. The papier mâché was for guys that were extremely...
He played 82 games last year.
He played 82 games last year.
Good point.
61-point pace only, though. I'll let you start, Vince.
If you guys ever watch Ehlers, you guys know he's a shoot-first player. He just shoots. Like last year, he got 233 shots, which led the team. So, to me, he's an up-and-down player. Last year, 61 points in 82 games. That is an off year for him. But I feel that's his range. I feel his range is between 60 and 70 just because...
So not necessarily an off year then.
Well, according to people, they were expecting more than that from him.
That's right.
But I feel he's between a 60 to 70 point player. I don't see him being more than that. And at the end of the day, his saving grace is if Velarde stays healthy, or else who's playing that second line center for him?
Well, Velarde actually
is-
played wing.
Yeah, Velarde played
First line wing last year.
with Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele.
So who played center?
Nemesnikov, Monahan,
Yeah, so now you're throwing Cole Perfetti in there?
or Lowry. No, not even. They have Nemesnikov right now projected.
God.
Yeah, it's brutal. But going back to Nikolai Ehlers, I think we're due for a bounce back season. It's also a contract year that usually comes with a bit of a boost in points. He's got something to prove, I think. If he can stay healthy, I agree. Maybe a 60-point pace, which is a little bit better than what he was pacing for last year. But look, would it surprise me if he played an 82 game season on a contract year? He came close to 70. No, it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me. He's done it before in 2020, 2021, 46 points in 47 games, 55 and 62 last year. So it could be done. His shooting percentage dipped below his average, so I see that going up a little bit more. But what scares me the most, they haven't changed the coach, have they? Oh, they did.
They did.
Rick
Yeah,
Bowness
of
is no
course.
longer coach.
No.
Rick Bowness dropped his minutes by 3 a game. He went from 18 to 15 in the span of 1 year.
There's a reason for that.
There is a reason for that. But now with a new coach, who knows, right? It's a fresh slate. So we'll see how that goes. But I do foresee Nikolai Ehlers' bounce back season.
Okay. I've lost complete faith in Ehlers. I held him for years and years and years, and I ended up trading away every single share that I owned in him. And the reason why is because, unfortunately, he was never healthy before this season. And finally, when he was healthy, he was barely fantasy relevant with 61 point pace or 61 points in 82 games. You're right. His time on ice had dipped, but the reason why is because he's just not effective at a higher time on ice necessarily. Or at least that's what Bowness thought. So he never played on the top line. And the reason he didn't play on the top line is because he just wanted his own line. Didn't work necessarily very well with those other two players. So Ehlers has been in trade rumors for a lot. He's not a player that seems to be necessarily, like, he's still 28, so he's in his prime. He could hit that 70-point mark. I've just lost a lot of faith. I lost a lot of time waiting on him, and I kind of got bitter out of it. His centers right now, or his line mates, are Perfetti and Nemesnikov. If we're seeing a jump in Perfetti, just natural progression from Perfetti, then that's not bad. But other than that, there's nothing here that tells me that he's going to be playing with players that could elevate him, right?
Look, you said he wasn't effective, or Coach Bowness didn't think he was effective. It was a plus 27 last year. I know plus minus whatever, but if you're a liability, you're not a plus 27.
They won 54 games last year. And he was playing with Toffoli. He was playing with...
No, he was playing with the best goalie in the league.
I agree, but so was everybody else. Everybody finished. Holy crap, DeMello was a plus 46.
Exactly.
DeMello is a very good player.
No, for sure, but plus 46, that's some crazy talk. Anyhow, moving on to the last one.
Nope, two more.
No, Gabe Velarde. Oh,
yeah.
yes, then we have
Gabriel Velarde.
Josh.
You'll catch up.
Josh.
Because I skipped more.
Yeah,
things
because
to
you
talk
went the
about.
wrong way.
Gabe Velarde. Gabe
Yes.
Velarde is the player that we had just said is a first liner right now.
Mm-hmm.
What do we think he does?
No, listen, stay healthy. if he
Another
stays,
loose leaf paper.
If he stays healthy, he'll get his power play one time. He'll get his first line time. He can easily hit between 70 and 80, but he hasn't been able, in his short career, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. So I can't put him in the point per game player because he just can't play 82 games.
Yeah, I see him. I think, like you said, staying healthy, he cracks 60 points. I think he can crack 30 goals, especially being on that first power play.
Well, he had 22 in 47 games
Right,
last
so
year.
I think he easily gets to 30 if he stays healthy. But again, like Vince said, when you have a track record, even when we're doing our projections, I don't think any of us could project him to play more than 70 games.
You think he can sustain an 18.8 shooting percentage?
He's done it every year.
He's done it 2 years in a row.
2 years in a row. His 3-year average is 17.9.
Yeah, but 22 goals in 47 games reaches like a 38 goal pace. I'm saying 30 goals to start. Then who knows? But again,
This
if their
guy-
power play improves,
He
with him
was-
it's going to help.
He was meant to be a superstar, but unfortunately, he can't stay healthy.
Well, he had 17 minutes of time on ice last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if that's going to be his range, it's very possible that he hits that tier 4 60 to 70 point range
Or more.
or more. His contract is phenomenal. He's one more year at 3.3, I think. So you're talking about a player that in cap leagues makes sense, especially if he could stay healthy. His shooting percentage doesn't scare me too much because, like I said, his 3-year average is 17.9 and he was at 18.8. That 0.9 difference is barely a goal,
Yeah, exactly.
or two. 14 points on the power play. That's going to be another factor.
I think that's going to go up.
If he stays healthy, he continues playing on that power play. Don't forget, it was his first year last year in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Everything relies on this player staying healthy. And that's the part that, unfortunately, I mean, he was part of my trade when I traded away Timo Meyer. I got back Velarde as part of the package. I got Toffoli, Velarde. Both of them ended up on Winnipeg, right? But Toffoli, Velarde, and another player, who I can't remember right now. A second-round pick, I think, actually, it was, who I drafted Cristal with. Anyways, so...
Not a bad return.
Not a bad return, but this player needs to stay healthy for me to have any fantasy relevance in him. And that's the part that we're going to see next year. I think it's going to be an interesting year for him. Josh Morrissey.
Nope, not quite. Nope. Tell you what, though, if he paces for another point per game season, then we might have a change.
He's
A
not,
defenseman in point per game.
yesterday he didn't pay. Last year he didn't pay.
It was close. No, last year it
No.
wasn't.
69
Yeah,
points
you're
in
right.
81
You're right.
games.
No, he's not quite there yet. He's not quite there yet. But still, 70 points in 80. Let's say 70 points in 82 games, and then the year before, point per game. If he does another 70 to 80 points, could enter the conversation because he does play over 25 minutes a game. He doesn't play all situations. He plays power play. Doesn't play shorthanded. But again, if you're producing 70 to 80 points consistently. Okay, consistently, and my criteria you'll find out next week is 3 consecutive years.
I was going to say, Vancouver fans were really bitter that
because
that
I'm saying
Quinn Hughes did 92 points,
and
and you
what
weren't
did I
considering
say?
as a top line.
If he does
sorry,
it
not top line, number one defenseman.
If he does it consistently, he's going to be one, and he will be. He's just not there yet. Anyhow, back to Josh Morrissey. 10 goals, 59 assists, 69 points in 81 games last year. That's coming off a season of 76 points in 78 games the year before. Plus 34, increased his shot totals to 196. His shooting percentage, 5.1. So it dipped back to more or less average for Morrissey. 19 points on the power play. I think he was a nice surprise these last 2 years. I don't think anybody expected him to be this productive offensively. I see a bit of a dip, but not much because who else is going to do it?
But
Yeah.
that was my point. Who else is there that's gonna even be close to him? So I feel
know a guy. I'll tell you later.
I feel he'll be there in pace. And it all depends on how that power play goes. If that power play goes well and is ranked top 10, then you'll see him hit the 70 points. But if that power play is still ranked very like at 22, then you'll see him stay between the low 60s, mid 60s.
So the previous year, 2022-23, he had 28 power play points.
Mm-hmm.
This year, he had 19 power play points. He was on an 80-point pace last year. He's on a 70-point pace this year, right? It's very rare to find defensemen that are between 70 to 80 points. So to me, I think we're even seeing somebody that should be ranked in tier 3 in Josh Morrissey. And he has the ability to do it because, like you said, there's not really anybody else.
That's a fair statement.
The only other power play player, which I'm going to transition to our power play quarterbacks here, is Neil Pionk. And Neil Pionk, unfortunately, and because I own him, I'm telling you. So you know how it's funny when we say you own Neil Pionk or you own, you throw flowers at your players. I am bitter against them.
Oh no, I have Neil Pionk, and trust me.
Do you have him in the league also?
In LPHL, yeah.
28 years old, 33 points. And you know what? Consistent 33 points. Because the year before that, he had 33 points. But he's making $5.8 million. I'm expecting a little more than 33 points.
Yeah. There's no challenge over there right now for Morrissey to get less points. No one's there to take those points away from him. Or that time on ice or that power play one.
Keep an eye out for Ville Heinola.
Oh,
another one Nick's bitter about.
Are you kidding me?
Well, he'll have this.
No, I'm just saying
He did resign, by the way.
he did resign for 2 years, and the guy, he hasn't played more than 12 games with the Winnipeg Jets because of injury and coming off the AHL, but he's still young and hasn't really had the opportunity because he's always injured. But I'm curious to see what he can do on a team that's not very deep on the back end in terms of offense. So does he come in this year healthy and chip in a little bit at the points, and maybe we see a gradual progression? I don't know. I own him. I got him as a throw-in for you in the trade of Cutter, Gauthier, and Hagel. And I honestly think I might keep him just as he's at 853,000 as a dart throw to hopefully give me a bit of depth on defense.
So Junior jumped straight into the prospects because I don't think we need to talk about goalies on this team.
We will talk about goalies, though.
But we don't need to because it's Hellebuck's team.
But we will talk about them.
You just want to give your GSE stat.
No, the fact is that we're giving
Goal
a
saved
full team
above
preview.
expected, everybody.
We're giving a full team preview. We're not skipping a position just because.
We're not scared. We're just saying it's Hellebuck. The Vezina Trophy, you know what he's going to give you.
Okay, anyways. So since we're talking about prospects, Heinola is somebody that lost a lot of development time. And other than him, Cole Perfetti still counts as a prospect. He's one to watch this year. You're expecting or hoping for a boost in his points totals. And Perfetti is a player that actually, how many points did he even get last year?
I think
40s.
like 38 or something.
I think
close.
he hit the 40 mark, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
it
so it
19?
was his third year in the league. He still hasn't reached that 200 game mark, so you still don't get rid of him. But he was on a 48 point pace the year before, a 44 point pace here. You need to start seeing some progression. We need to start seeing him hit that 55 point pace this year, and that's where I'm.
And he has the opportunity to do so.
That's the reason they didn't sign Tyler Toffoli, Sean Monahan. I'm guessing they think that he's ready to take the next step, and the minutes those guys were taking up.
Yeah, so I'm hoping for 55 points from Perfetti this year.
That's a reasonable hit for him.
And he's still it's his last year of his ECL.
Yeah.
So actually, no, I'm sorry. He's on RFA right
No,
now.
he's
He
on
hasn't
RFA.
signed
He
yet.
hasn't
He hasn't
But
signed.
I don't see him signing anything crazy. He's at 45 point paces for 2 years in a row, right? Colby Barlow is going to be interesting. I wanted to talk about Rutger McGroarty.
The most hated guy in Winnipeg.
Rutger McGroarty is an NCAA player who was drafted, I think, 16th overall.
16, 17, around there.
Anyways, I should have probably looked that up beforehand.
I tell it
but
to you. I tell it to you.
He doesn't want to play for Winnipeg. He's bitter against Winnipeg because of the fact that he didn't get an opportunity to play last year, and he didn't play.
It's not that he doesn't want to play with Winnipeg. I think his demands are just.
No, he wants out.
Yeah,
he asked for a trade, so he doesn't want to play with
But
Winnipeg.
he wants out because he feels he's more ahead of the schedule than the team itself thinks. But even like we're discovering right now,
14th overall.
we're discovering right now that he's in trade talks everywhere, and that he's got demands.
Yeah, he wants to be on an NHL team next year. He doesn't want to be
Well,
AHL.
I
team
read a
next year.
rumor that Montreal, after the draft, so during the draft, if they didn't have Demidov at 5, they had a deal in place for him. And then after the draft, they also had a deal in place, but his demands were just as high going with the Canadiens. He wanted an NHL spot, and he wanted certain amount of minutes. This is what was being reported.
Yeah. And
So it's almost like he wants to decide where he wants to go. I think this ends up being where end of his contract, he gets to go where, like Fox.
It's not end of his contract. He plays 4 years in the NCAA.
That's it. As end of a NCAA
But
contract.
he'll lose money out of this because he can sign an ELC contract, but he's deciding that. Listen, players like that.
Yeah, me nervous.
Well,
Don't get me nervous. Listen, confidence is one thing. You need confidence to play in the NHL, but
but you have
But
never
you have to-
played a game and you're
yeah,
already
exactly.
dictating,
You have
right?
to earn
Yeah.
something as
You
well.
have
You,
to
don't
earn it.
just nothing is handed to you. You
No.
got to earn something.
like this is maybe a bit in the Dubois era where every team he goes to, he wants to get traded.
Yeah.
There are very good offensive rookies coming up. Barlow, McGroarty, he's not going to stay, but you're probably seeing him traded for something soon. Chaz Lucius, Brad Lambert had a very good season.
AHL season, yeah.
Chibrikov, like they have offensive players coming up. So it's a team that I feel bad that they're in last place on Dom's list because they had the worst offseason. There are some light at the end of the tunnel. we really have to see what they do with Rutger McGordy.
Or Ehlers. If they trade him, they keep him.
Yeah.
I feel this is why I think they're a bit in a limbo because they have pieces they want to trade. It's just they're not getting the right partner right now to trade.
And them reaching the playoffs again, if they reach the playoffs again, it's all going to be because of Connor Hellebuyck.
You go, Nick. You talk about that goaltending.
So 921 save percentage, Vezina Trophy winner, goals against average of 2.39, goal save above expected, fourth in the league. Actually, number one in the league if you counted over players that played over 40 games, I think. So he was the best goalie, hands down. Not much to talk about. Like Vince said, he just wanted to skip everything.
No. Okay. My question.
But his second goalie, backing him up, is no longer Laurent Brassois. And Laurent Brassois had an amazing backup goalie season in Winnipeg. Kaapo Kähkönen is coming from New Jersey. Kaapo Kähkönen was in San Jose before that.
Yeah.
I thought New Jersey was going to keep him.
898 goal save percentage, goals against average of 3.64. It's not NHL numbers there. But his goal save above expected wasn't horrible. It was 26th in the league. So there's a potential here that this player could be a decent backup in the NHL.
Well, they need one. Hellebuyck cannot play 60 games anymore. If they want to succeed in the playoffs, he can't play 60 games. It's 3 seasons in a row where he plays 66, 64, and 60 games.
Yeah.
There's no goalies that do that anymore in this generation. So he needs to, his games total needs to come down to 50, maybe 55. And I think Kähkönen could give you some solid starts in those 30 games
Hopefully.
you'll play. You know, he also, Kähkönen also played with San Jose, who we can say was a terrible team. So
Absolutely.
he does have a better team in front
And
of him.
even New Jersey's defense is nothing to write home
well,
about.
that's why they didn't make the playoffs,
Yeah.
right? So
Once they lost Hamilton,
Yeah.
New Jersey, it was downhill.
and I feel with the results that happened with Winnipeg last year in the playoffs, that early exit, they realized that they can't go and tell Hellebuyck go play 65 games.
Well, guys, I mean, until he stops putting up 2.39 goals against average and 920 save percentages, why not? He's played over 60 games in
He's
5 of
getting
the
paid for
last 7 years.
He's getting paid for it.
So he could do it. He actually excels when he does it. Yes, for the playoffs, are you burning him out? Yes, but I think there's, until they fix their lineup, you have no choice to rely on him if you want to win. And Winnipeg is in a situation where they seem to want to win. They're going to have to play him 60 games if they have any chance at all of making the playoffs.
He just signed an $8.5 million matching Scheifele for 7 years, and that's starting this year. So
Many
more
of us
years.
thought it would be 10.
7 more years. Yeah, that's right. 7 more years. That's going to bring him to age 38.
Okay, so his monthly stats, okay, for Hellebuyck last year. October, 7 games played, 4 wins, 2 losses. November, 10 games played, 6 wins, 4 losses. December, 9 games played, 7 wins, 2 overtime losses. January, 9 games played, 6 wins, 3 losses. February, 8 games played, 5 wins, 3 losses. March, 12 games played, 4 wins, 7 losses. You can't tell me that he wasn't getting tired playing all these games.
It's a good point. It's a fair point, I think.
You know, and then in April he picked it back up, 5 games, 5 wins. But it's to be an NHL goalie in today's game is not like when the Brodeurs used to play 70, 75 games a year. It's a complete different game now. So if Winnipeg is thinking of we're progressing, we're winners, we want to make the playoffs and go far in the playoffs, Hellebuyck can't play 60 games. My opinion.
Well, do you have any other thoughts before I close it off?
Nope. Just like to Vince's point, his goal saved above. Never mind. Forget it. You already mentioned it, so I won't mention it again. No, but it was better in the first half of the season than the second. That's what I was getting at.
Look, they lost Monahan. They lost Foley. Those are big holes in the lineup. You're hoping that Perfetti could replace a little bit of that, but with natural progression, We haven't seen it yet. We're hoping this year he will do a little bit, but it's still a lot to make up when you lose Monahan and Toffoli. Dylan and Schmid leaving on defense and not properly or adequately replacing them is not very good. Laurent Brossoit was a downgrade from Laurent Brossoit to Kakinen. So I understand why Dom said this team lost the most out of all other teams in the league. And guys,
Very quickly, playoff team? Yes or no?
Winnipeg, yeah.
wild card. I think they're going to be right there. Like,
Look, if Nashville goes in, then I think Winnipeg's the team to go out from that division.
Ooh, I have a team in the East that's gonna. When we talk about the East, I have a surprise team that I think is not gonna make the playoffs this year.
All right,
well,
guys.
stay tuned
So
for the Eastern Conference. But
that does it for the Central.
that
We
does it
should
for
have
the
done
Central.
we should have done a ranking.
Well, we're doing Pacific next week.
So maybe
So-
we'll start by saying where we think each team will finish, just as a.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, so don't forget to follow along on social media. You can find us on X, Instagram at Partial Break Pod, on YouTube at Partial Breakaway Fantasy Hockey, on TikTok. And
We
let,
used,
let me just add something. We know you're a lot listening, and we know you like a lot of our posts,
Our
but it's
discussion.
very important to follow and subscribe on YouTube, because the reality is we are trying to get guests, and guests will look at your followers and your subscribers because they want it to help them as well. So help us
Help you.
help you.
we do this for free, guys.
Like and subscribe.
We do this for free. We do it after full shifts of being parents and being. Stop that. So we do this for you guys. I hope you guys enjoy the conversations at least. At the end of the day, we use Frozen Tools. We use Daily Face Off. I use Money Puck for the goaltending information.
Cap wages.
Cap Wages, Puckpedia, all of these fan tracks for our leagues.
Daily
Thank you to
Face-Off.
Sportira for my new hoodie as well, and my new trophy. So thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Have a good week, everybody.
Have a good one.